All your life, you thought that a crisis is about men, that a man at 40 goes crazy, buys a motorcycle, looks for a mistress, and tries to prove to himself that he is still alive. But that is only half the truth. The real chaos begins with women. Because for a man, the crisis is simple. He needs a new challenge. But for a woman, it is a catastrophe of the soul. After 40, a woman faces the mirror for the first time, the one that does not flatter. There is no girl, no princess, no seductress. There is a stranger who is afraid of disappearing. And at that moment, she begins to play new games, destructive games. Games where at stake are your marriage, your children, your life. A man ages with his body, a woman with her soul. And that is precisely why her madness hits harder than your gray hair. She may hide it behind makeup, behind a smile, behind the words, "I am still young." But inside, she feels that men's attention no longer falls on her the way it once did. Before, it was enough for her to walk into a room and the air would change. Men noticed. Women envied. She thought this power was eternal, that she would always be the center of attraction. And now the glances slide past. And this is not just a blow to her self-esteem. It is a crack in her world. A crack through which despair begins to seep. A woman has always lived with the feeling that her beauty is currency. It is her power, her weapon, her ticket to life. She got used to the fact that she could manipulate with it, get attention with a smile, conquer a heart with a gesture, subdue a man with a glance. But after 40, the market changes. The young, the daring, the fresh come onto the stage, and they intercept what once belonged to her without struggle. And for the first time, she feels not like the queen of the ball, but like a guest who is forgotten, not invited to the celebration of life. And this is when panic sets in. She begins to cling to her appearance, spend hours at the mirror, look for any way to regain the lost attention. Creams, procedures, endless conversations about how she has merely become wiser. But the harder she tries, the more visible her despair becomes. A man sees not youth, but the grimace of a struggle with the inevitable. And instead of attractiveness, he feels the cold breath of fear coming from a woman who no longer accepts her nature. Thus, her illusion collapses. Yesterday she was a muse, today a huntress, who no longer chooses, but begs.
Yesterday, her energy was enchanting. Today, it frightens. And it is precisely here, in this collapse of illusions, that the first inner explosion is born.
Yesterday, her energy was enchanting. Today, it frightens. And it is precisely here, in this collapse of illusions, that the first inner explosion is born, which relentlessly destroys her family. Because a woman who has lost her main weapon always seeks a new way to compensate for the loss. And most often, this way is the destruction of what is still holding on. Once, she played the role of a princess, light, flirtatious, charming. Her whole life was built on the energy of seduction and the expectation that the man would conquer and she would choose. But after 40, this scenario breaks down. The smile ceases to work as a weapon. The old games no longer bring results. And here, something else awakens. The archetype of the witch. This is not the sweet girl you admired at the beginning of the relationship. This is a new version, filled with shadow. She becomes harsh, caustic, demanding. Her feminine energy ceases to be a source of inspiration and turns into a force of destruction. She no longer just waits, she manipulates. She does not hint, but accuses. She does not ask, but demands. In myths, the witch has always symbolized knowledge and destruction at the same time. She feels that she is losing power through beauty and begins to take it through fear. The man suddenly finds himself facing a woman who no longer inspires him to heroic deeds, but drains his strength. She changes her strategy. Instead of softness, sharpness. Instead of mystery, aggression. And the most dangerous thing is that this does not happen instantly. At first, it flashes in her words, then in her glance, then in her actions. You do not even notice how the princess turns into a witch. But one day, you wake up next to a person who does not give light, but pulls you into the shadow. This is not an accident. This is a stage of her inner transformation in which the archetype of the seductress dies and the archetype of the destroyer begins to dictate the rules. And then your home turns not into a fortress, but into a battlefield where you oppose not the woman, but her own demons. After 40, a woman stops playing at modesty. If earlier she could mask her desire to control with beautiful words and smiles, now the mask falls. She no longer wants to be just a wife. She feels cramped in the role of companion, mother, housekeeper. She wants power, and not abstract power, but real, over you, over the family, over your decisions.
In her eyes, you are no longer the man with whom a union is built, but a resource, an instrument that must be subdued. Every step you take becomes an object of criticism, every word a reason for complaints. Where once there was dialogue, now there are commands. She begins to rewrite the rules of the family to suit herself, and if you do not resist, your home turns into her kingdom, where there is no place for your strength. But the most dangerous thing is that her power is fueled not by logic, but by emotions. A man lives with a clear goal: to earn, to protect, to achieve. A woman after 40 lives with inner chaos. She needs recognition, attention, proof of your love, and your submission. She wants everything at once, and if she does not get it, she destroys on her own, only to later blame you. The family ceases to be a union. It becomes an arena where a silent war for control is fought. She will not be satisfied with anything but the feeling that you are in her hands. For her, power is a way not to feel the approach of her own emptiness. And if a man does not understand this law, he becomes a hostage of her crisis. Not an enemy, not a rival, but precisely a hostage, held not in a cage, but in the trap of her emotions. And to escape this trap without losses is almost impossible. At some point, the woman suddenly realizes that everything she has been building for 20 years brings her no joy. The house, the family, the children, the everyday life, all of this turns not into a source of pride, but into a symbol of her fatigue. And then, within her, the fire of rebellion ignites. This is not a quiet protest, but a thirst to destroy everything that reminds her of the years lived. She no longer wants to be only a wife and mother. The very thought that life is already predetermined and will not change begins to suffocate her. She seeks new sensations, casual affairs, experiments, endless searches for herself. The woman who yesterday was a pillar today challenges her very role. She is drawn to the idea of freedom. Even if this freedom turns into loneliness, the man does not understand this paradox. For him, the family is the result of his labor, that for which he worked and what he strove toward. For her, the family suddenly becomes a cage. Where he sees meaning, she feels shackles. And it is precisely in this contradiction that destruction begins. The man holds on to the home, the woman seeks the door outside. The rebellion against her own life is her way of not admitting that the problem lies within herself. It is easier for her to blame her husband, circumstances, fate, than to admit the truth. She is dissatisfied with herself, and then, instead of seeking inner balance, she destroys the old world, believing that on the ruins a new one can be built. But the truth is cruel. Most often nothing grows on the ruins, only ashes, grievances, and broken families. You may be reliable, faithful, work, take care of the family, and still one day wake up in the role of the accused because her inner crisis demands a sacrifice. And most often that sacrifice is you. She will say that you give too little attention, that you are cold, that you do not understand her, but the truth is that you are simply not capable of closing the hole that is formed in her soul.
It's not your fault. It's her own war with herself, but she does not admit it. She needs someone to blame. She needs an object onto which she can throw all the pain. And this object is the husband. You become a hostage of her emotional swings. Today she laughs. Tomorrow she cries. The day after tomorrow she accuses you that her life was wasted in vain. You do not control the situation. You only react. But the more you react, the more power she feels. She needs drama, and if it does not exist, she will create it. The family turns into a theater, but this is not a theater of love. It is a theater of the absurd, where you have been assigned the main role in a tragedy. You don't even have time to notice how your home ceases to be a quiet haven. It becomes a field of psychological war, where every word of yours can be used against you. That is why many men after 40 feel broken. Not because they have become weaker, but because they were dragged into someone else's crisis.
fortress, into someone else's storm from which there is no way out. She keeps you in this storm not because she hates, but because she herself is drowning. But that is what is frightening. You drown with her. A woman after 40 lives in a state of constant contradiction. She wants stability, but at the same time craves chaos. She demands reliability from a man, but she herself seeks sharp sensations. She says she values family, and on the same evening, she makes plans that will destroy this family. This is not a game. This is an inner paradox in which different archetypes of her psyche collide. On one side sits the mother within her, the one who wants care, safety, respect. On the other, the destroyer, who needs to burn everything old just to feel alive. These two forces fight within her every day, and the man finds himself in the center of this battle, even if he does not understand what is happening. You think you are talking to your wife, but in fact, today in front of you is the mother, tomorrow the witch, the day after tomorrow the offended little girl. She herself does not realize how much she changes, but you feel it on yourself. The same word evokes either tears or aggression or cold silence. It is in this paradox that chaos is born. A man is used to clarity, goal, path, result. A woman after 40 lives in a labyrinth where there is no logic, only emotions. You try to draw a straight line, and she turns it into a circle. And the more you try to find a way out, the deeper it pulls you into her psychological whirlpool.
She destroys not because she wants to, but because she does not know another way to cope with the inner war. All the years you were told that man and woman are the same, that equality solves all conflicts, but after 40, this illusion collapses with a deafening crash. Man is simple. He needs purpose, clarity, order. Woman is complex. Her psyche is a tangle of contradictions, emotional storms, and archetypes that change like the phases of the moon. That is why, when a man ages, he becomes predictable, calm, sometimes even wise. And when a woman ages, her inner chaos comes out, and this chaos recognizes no rules. It does not obey logic, it knows no measure. What yesterday seemed like a family union, tomorrow turns into an arena of psychological war. The man thinks, I did everything right. I worked, I provided, I held the family. But the woman sees otherwise. She feels her world collapsing, and instead of gratitude, she brings doubts, reproaches, quarrels into the home. Equality, about which you were told for so long, turns out to be an illusion, because man and woman age differently. Man with his body, woman with her soul. And when the soul does not accept reality, when it clings to youth, to power, to attention, she destroys everything around her, and the family becomes the first victim. You must understand her madness, not as chance and not as whim. It is a pattern. It is the result of how the female psyche is built. Men age calmly, women age in a storm. And if you are not ready, this storm will sweep away your home, your life, and your future. Remember, a woman can be a muse, or she can be a witch. And most often, after 40, this line is erased. The question is not why they lose their minds. The question is whether you are ready to withstand this madness. Because men do not lose where they are struck with a fist. They lose where a woman destroys them from within, slowly but mercilessly. And if you do not want to end up in this trap, look at things soberly. A woman after 40 is not just a person next to you. It is a force that will either make your home a fortress or turn it into ruins. The choice, as always, is yours. Thank you to everyone who liked and subscribed to the channel. What do you think about this? Write in the comments, and see you in the next video.